Well, thanks for joining me today. This is Lynn, and it's Wednesday, December 11th. I look the way that I do today because I'm going for my sleep study. There's another video that will talk about that I'm recording on this same day today, but I have to prepare for that. So there's no styling effort that's been made in my hair, and there's no makeup. Um, so this is me, raw and unfiltered, which is what I promised you in the first video. Right now, I want to talk about some research that I'm participating in as part of my crusade for early detection, which leads to early intervention, which leads to not having to go through this frustrating process of understanding, do I or do I not have a neurodegenerative disease? And if I do, is there anything that can be done about it? The Michael J. Fox Foundation has a study called PPMI, which stands for Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative. And it's a study that they are spearheading to enroll people that have risk factors for Parkinson, most notably for the study I'm going to talk about today, loss of sense of smell. So they are collecting volunteers to take a smell test, and I signed up for that, and I got my kit in the mail yesterday, and I wanted to share it with you and tell you what that experience was like. So inside the kit was a list of instructions on what I'm supposed to do and an envelope. And inside the envelope, there were 4 booklets that look like this. And inside the booklet, there are little scratch and sniff tests, and there are 10 of them in each booklet. So I've made some video of me actually taking the test. I went through the first booklet today, and I'm like, oh, scratch and sniff, piece of cake. I've done that before. It's going to be fine. The instructions are I'm supposed to take my pencil and make a few scratches from left to right on each one of these little patches here. And then I'm supposed to fill out right here what I detected that little patch smelled like. And the instructions say, if I smell something that is not one of the choices offered, then I should fill in the answer that's closest to my experience. If I don't smell anything at all, they want me to just guess and just fill anything out. They don't want me to leave anything blank. And then when the test is completed, I'll have this little chart, and then I'll go on their website and I will enter that data in the website. I don't mail this back anywhere. And I'm also not going to get results. They're collecting the data. They do say that there's a possibility that someone from the organization may contact me. They may not. I may never know. But I do know what my experience was. So here's some video of me actually filling out the test where I am using the pencil the way that they've asked me to. And in some cases, I went back and scratched a little more, even though they told me not to over scratch in the instructions, because I didn't really smell anything at all. So it was pretty early in the test that I realized this was not going to be your average scratch and sniff test. It was not going to be a simple thing. The odors are quite faint. Either they are quite faint, or the loss of sense that I have is so profound that I'm not able to detect in most cases. In the 10 samples in the first book, I sniffed, and sometimes I sniffed with both nostrils to make sure I was detecting something. I was not positive certain in any of the 10 of them. And what I chose to do in the blank area on each of these pages is to write down whether I was guessing, and I couldn't identify a smell at all, whether I did detect something faintly. And I think out of these 10, there was only one that I said, oh yeah, I think I know what that is. But for the most part, what I wrote on each page was either that it was a guess or that it was something very faint. There was nothing that was certain. So I really don't know what that means. And I'm super curious. So I probably will do a little bit more research to figure out what the deal was. So just as an example, the first one that they gave me right here, whoops, I'm sorry if I'm making noise by the microphone. So the choices they gave me, that's probably not focusing very well, are that this is either going to smell like honey, like pizza, like orange, or like bubblegum. So those are very different smells. I chose bubblegum. Was it bubblegum? I have no idea. The second one, the choices were leather, bubblegum again, chili, or dill pickle. Again, very different aromas from each other. And I chose bubblegum again. So I was not off to a great start. It went on from there. I was guessing, faint. In a couple of cases, I wrote faint and guess. It was faint. I was able to detect that there was an odor, but I really couldn't attach it to any of the options that they gave me. The best one yet was number 8. And I wrote it was faint, but the best yet. Come back and smell it again. And that one, the choices were peanut, clove, lemon, or banana. Now, those are different enough from each other that it should be pretty clear. The strength of this one, and it's still strong now, is clove. It happens to be an aroma that I'm extraordinarily fond of. So I was delighted that I was able to detect it. And something that I noted in my diary that I'm keeping about all of this is we have a fresh herb garden in the backyard. And very often, if my husband goes out, he does a lot of the cooking in the family. So if he's going to cook with something that requires fresh herbs, he'll go out and he'll snip off some sprigs of rosemary or mint or basil. And when he does that, he has a tendency to give them a little crush with his finger. And as he comes in the door, he'll come around behind me and stick that under my nose to give me an opportunity to delight in the fragrance of the fresh herb. And I usually go, very nice. But if I can't see what he just put under my nose, I will tell you that I usually can't distinguish what it is unless it's basil. Basil will get through. The rosemary and the mint, not so much. I can detect that there was something herbaceous, but I wouldn't be able to distinguish between rosemary and mint if I didn't see it before I smelled it. So that was one of the ways that I already knew that I had that particular symptom. In any event, I'm going to send this test back and probably never hear from them again, but I'm participating in research, and that's important to me. Um, I want to keep this video fairly brief, so I'm not going to talk about today the other risk factors. I just want to talk about sensory input. The sense of smell is also very much connected. You probably know this to your sense of taste. So when COVID came around, the loss of smell and taste were one of the primary symptoms people were looking out for, was how they knew they had COVID and not something else like the flu. For me, this started years earlier, years before anybody ever heard of it. So when that symptom was made public and with all the COVID news in 2019, 2020, early 2020, I said, oh, yeah, that. Yeah, I've been dealing with that for a long time. And another one of the ways that I knew there was an issue is my husband would say to me, do you have any intention of cleaning that cat litter box anytime soon? It stinks. And I guess, I should be grateful that I couldn't detect it, but because he could, it would really be good for the marriage for me to be able to also detect it so I could get in there and take care of that. Of course, there are other cues like visual cues, but I'm easily distracted. So I think that's another risk factor. I'm not sure. I'm trying to make light of this and I'm trying to keep my sense of humor through all of this. But my sense of taste, I don't think was greatly diminished. But the more I think about it, the more I think it probably has been, because the sense of taste and the olfactory sense are so connected to one another that there's got to be. I can taste things, but I now feel like maybe things have been diminished for so long that it's hard for me to even know what they used to taste like. And one of the things I can add to that while we're talking about the senses is I have a hearing loss. I believe that I have a hearing loss because of tinnitus, and I believe that I have tinnitus because of a fall that I took. So head injury is another risk factor. And I had a fall where I fell down a flight of stairs because my foot got stuck, the heel of my shoe in a top step. And so I pitched forward and I went all the way down a flight of outdoor deck stairs. It was a full flight of stairs. And I landed on my chin at the bottom. Uh, and I cut my chin open. I took some stitches. I had a couple of other bruises and injuries. and thought that I was going to die that day because it was a heck of a fall. But I have had TMJ and tinnitus since that experience. As I said, I landed on my chin. There's always, always, always a, I don't even want to call it a ringing. Sometimes it's a clicking, sometimes it's a rushing, sometimes it's a high frequency tone. Sometimes it's a combination of those things, but it is always there. But every now and then, I will feel like I'm listening to something, a video or the television or something, and or even someone talking, and things always sound just a tiny bit muffled to me, particularly speech will sound a little bit muffled. And if there is any other sound in the room, like water running or music playing or ambient noise because you're in a crowded location, that's going to make it even harder for me to discern speech. If I'm not looking at your mouth, if you turn away from me, or if you're muttering and I can't see your lips, I may not be able to understand what you're saying to me. But every now and then, something will clear just for a minute, and all of a sudden, I can hear much better. Everything sounds clear as a bell. There's no muddling, there's no muddiness for just a couple minutes, and then it goes away. I'll be talking to a lot of neurologists going forward, so you can bet that I'm going to bring that up. Hearing and vision changes, and I am having some vision changes as well, are considered risk factors. And so is our head injuries. But since I've had all of those things, I'm trying to wade through what is related to what is being caused by my basal ganglia or my lack of dopamine, what's being caused by something happening in the middle of my brain, and what's being caused by an injury that I had, or natural aging, or arthritis, or anything else. These are all the things that I'm tearing my hair out trying to figure out. And what I am trying to engage with my community of fellow strugglers to compare notes with, and what I'll be questioning neurologists about. I don't like loose ends. I want to get this. I want to understand it, and I want to know what to do about it. I have a very strong sense of a ticking clock, and I want to know, how deep into this am I? How quickly is this going to progress? And boy, oh boy, will I talk about that in another video, where I watched a presentation from somebody who was talking about the two different subgroups of people with Parkinson's, the ones that have motor symptoms and the ones that do not, or do not develop them until much, much later, which I'm thinking I'm probably in that subgroup. And unfortunately, the news is not great for how this thing progresses with people in my subgroup. More on that in another video. So we're talking about the senses right now: hearing, vision, smell, taste, touch. Touch is the one thing that is not affected as a risk factor, but 4 out of the 5 senses are impacted by this. And I do believe that all of them pertain to me. So to end things on a positive note, because let me tell you, right now, it is more important to me than it has ever been to find bright sides and to try to hang on to normalcy and to try to look for things that feel pleasant, because I'm preoccupied with all of this stuff that seems so freaking bleak. I want to tell you about a book that has been a favorite of mine since the moment I first discovered it. And it's a book, something that I used to do ages ago and I don't do enough of anymore. And part of that is because people don't read books as much as they used to since the internet. I used to buy multiple copies of books that were really important to me, particularly used copies that I could get inexpensively. I'd have a half dozen copies of them on hand at any given moment. And whenever something would come up in conversation that would remind me of that book that I thought the person would enjoy, I would delight in being able to run to my bookshelf, pull a copy off the shelf, and make a gift of it. One of those books, it's just so funny. I'm going to tell you about 2 of those books, because who knew that it was in some silly way prophetic to what I'm going through now. One of them was a book by the author is Diane Ackerman, and the book was called A Natural History of the Senses. And the entire book was divided into the 5 senses and just took a deep dive into everything that you could imagine, from how that sense has been addressed in literature, what the science is behind it, personal anecdotes, everything that can be known about that particular sense. And the book just invited you to immerse yourself and allow yourself to become hyper aware of that particular sense in yourself. And I loved the book because I read it at a time when I was young enough that I was still kind of figuring the world out in some ways. And to have kind of this series of prompts that gave me a reason to pay more attention to the world around me from the perspective of every one of my senses was something that I've delighted in. And as an artist, I have always been somebody that enjoys color and music and anything that delights the senses. I used to practice shiatsu, a form of Japanese acupressure. So that sense of touch has always been very important to me. I was an aromatherapist for a while, so that sense of smell mattered a lot to me. And I don't really even know if I could detect that. Maybe essential oils are strong enough that I would be able to. So for these things to be diminishing in me is not a happy thought. But that book, I feel, is something that I'm going to be able to go back and revisit sometime very soon. And I would encourage you to go and find it too. It's just an absolute garden of delight for the senses. The other book that I want to mention, oddly enough, because I'm having this sleep study tonight, is called Creative Dreaming. And it's one of several books that was written about the concept of lucid dreaming. And when I read that book, I actually took all of the instruction that was in the book to try to teach myself how to lucid dream because I had not ever. And that is, if you don't know, lucid dreaming is becoming aware of your dream while you're in the dream and therefore being able to manipulate it to your benefit, hopefully to your benefit. And it talks about how dreams are experienced and dealt with and regarded in other cultures. And it's just really a fascinating book. I'm fairly certain that one is out of print now. I used to have at least 4 copies of it on hand at any given time, but I haven't been able to find it recently. I think I have 1 copy of it hanging around. So I really don't need any help dreaming these days. But it would be great to be able to lucid dream now. And the problem is when I'm having these REM sleep disorders, I don't know that I'm dreaming at the time. You have to at least be able to become aware that you are dreaming in the dream. So if I can find my copy of that book, it might be something to go and take a look at and see if maybe I can integrate some of that into what I'm experiencing right now. If you are struggling with REM sleep behavior disorder and are interested in lucid dreaming and whether or not that's something you're interested in, I would like to hear from you. And there are other books. All you have to do is Google it and find other books about lucid dreaming that will give you instruction on how to begin teaching yourself how to do that. I would love to start a dialogue with other people that are interested in that and whether or not that can actually help. Since this is neurological in nature, I'm not certain that it would have any impact whatsoever or if it's the same part of the brain that's being touched in these moments. But I mean, I just figured that out on the fly while I was making this video, and I promised you raw and unfiltered, so that's what it's going to be. Anyway, the senses today, that's what it is. There are a bunch of other risk factors that make me think that I fit this profile. And I'm going to talk about them in another video. But for now, I'm going to thank you for joining me. I'm going to ask you to please stay with me because I need you right now. And I don't want to go through this alone. So knowing you're here and watching that view count go up actually helps me feel less alone. So like, subscribe, not because I care about the metrics, but because I care about you. And I want to know that you care about me. Thanks for joining me. Really.